vibe. Look in my eyes, he hypnotized. He don't know why. He don't know why.
Warning, extended satirical material in this program may strike some viewers as vulgar, offensive, prurient, or worst of all, serious. It's satire. Please adjust your expectations and interpretations accordingly. Welcome to Why So Spicy with Nicholas B. Ask you questions about like being a prepper and stuff, because I just interviewed Colonel Miller last night. He's one of the biggest preppers in America, I think. He owns Fortitude Ranch, which is like in 14 states now. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Anyways, he's on my podcast. I'm going to have you listen to him after this, but here we go.
Okay.
Hey, Caroline, not use your last name, but thanks for being on the show here. I'm going to ask you some just general questions like, what's your origin story, like from a Marvel comic? Like, where were you born?
Well, I was born in New Jersey. My dad was in the Navy, and so I was born in a naval hospital in Lakeland, New Jersey.
What? I didn't know that. And so
yeah, my dad was in the Navy. He met my mother. She was French, and she lived in France. He met her over there, and then they got married and had me. Then they had a contentious divorce, and then I ended up with him, and then he married a very nice German lady, and I grew up in Germany for part of my life.
What? That's even, wow. I didn't know that. And so he was in the Navy still, and you grew up in Germany?
Well, no, he had to get out of the Navy because when he divorced, back in that day, you couldn't be a single parent in the military. So anybody who became a single parent had to leave. And so I often heard about how he loved the Navy more than anything in the world, and he wished he could have stayed. So, yeah, I grew up with that.
And what part of Germany did you stay in then?
Well, we started off outside of Frankfurt in a town called Groß-Auheim, which is now part of Hanau. The large military, large army installation there. And then we moved. Let's see. Then actually, we started off in Munich because my stepmother, she's from Munich. And then we moved up there. My dad was working for airlines. He was a mechanic. And then moved on to, Germany. But then he got an opportunity for a change in job, and then we moved to Iran. And I went to high school. I finished off high school in Tehran, Iran. That was obviously a couple years before Iran fell.
What? You were in Iran?
Yes, I was.
Gosh.
Yes, I was. I mean, it's definitely well, it was definitely a different way of life. I mean, there was a lot of fun at the time. I mean, my parents and I were not getting along very well, so I left before I turned 18. I left home before I turned 18. So I was I don't want to say I was exactly homeless, but I was dependent on the kindness of others. Let me put it this way: for about 6 weeks, and then my father had my residence permit for Iran revoked, put me on an airplane, sent me to my grandmother who lived in Iowa, and then I joined the Army the first time.
Wow.
Back in 77. That was the first time.
My God. So, wow, that's a wild story. I never suspected that in your past. Wow. So you lived in Iran, high school. Did you have to speak Arabic, or did they send you to an English school? Like, were they fluent enough to get you into a private, like, English?
No. So a lot of contractors and military were over there, you know, the obligatory consultants and all that good stuff. So I worked when people worked for the companies and they were from other countries, the company paid for the school. So I started off in a German school, but it didn't work out because German school systems are completely different, and the way they work, and it's not like a semester system in the United States. So when I didn't do well transferring in because they were halfway through a chemistry book. They were much more advanced. So I had a little trouble with that. And I transferred to the American high school, which was Tehran American School. And that's what I graduated from, beginning of 1977.
Wow. That's expats is what I've always known people as. If you're English, Australian, or American, and you're in a foreign country, you're an expat. Anyone else is there? Is
Well,
a
yeah.
damn immigrant. I always thought that was
Well,
funny.
pretty much, yes. So yeah, so my dad was an expat. So and then after I left home, and I returned to the States, and then I joined the Army the first time. My parents eventually moved back to Germany, and then that's where they were settled.
Damn.
And my stepmother's still there. My dad died a few years ago, and then my stepmother's still there.
And so when you first joined the Army, you were enlisted then? You didn't have any college?
No, I was brand new. Yes, I was 18 years old. I was an MP dog handler, and I was stationed at Misawa Army. Yeah, I was stationed at Misawa Army Depot, which is just outside of Ramstein. Way back when, I mean, there was no transportation. It was just this little outpost. It was a nuke weapons site, and so the sentry dog handlers guarded that, and then I belonged to a patrol dog handler school, and we guarded the conventional ammo, which meant let's spend a lot of time out in the woods at night.
Did you have, I love dogs, and this is my question, a German Shepherd or a Malinois?
No, they were German Shepherds back then. The majority of them had to be German Shepherds, yes. Now, they eventually changed over to Malinois, and then they got rid of the sentry dogs and the patrol dogs, and they combined them. The interesting thing is that back then, women could not be sentry dog handlers because that was considered a combat MOS, I guess. They could only be patrol dog handlers.
What the hell
that was back in the day. Well, that was back in the day when women were actually very restricted from doing an awful lot of things. For example, I wanted to join the Navy, but women could not go to sea. And so, I mean, I didn't want to be on shore just doing admin work. So then Air Force was always very restricted. They couldn't fly. Not that I would have been able to, but I felt it was restrictive. Couldn't join the Coast Guard because, again, couldn't go to sea because that was considered combat role. And so the only option left to me at the time was the Army. So I joined the Army.
I didn't know any of that. And so, wow, the patrol, this is going to sound ridiculous, but when you patrol with a dog and you find something, you're not allowed to do anything as a woman. You have to call a man for backup. It just seems weird to me. Like, the difference between sentry and patrol. Like,
so the sentry dogs, so the big difference at the time was that sentry dogs, so a patrol dog was supposed to be able to be called off a bite. And they were supposed to be used for regular law enforcement. Now, sentry dogs, they were straight guarding, and they would not be able to be called off a bite. They had to be choked off a bite.
Damn.
The interesting thing is that patrol dogs and sentry dogs were in Vietnam, and so it was kind of a moot point. And then, for example, in my case, when I was stationed at Misau, and we were guarding the conventional ammo bunkers, and it was, more or less conventional. And then there was this X area that was right in the middle of that installation that had the sentry dogs. So it had the double fence lines, it had the guard towers, it had the big clear zones, and then the nuke weapons were on there. And so I would be like on the railhead, or we had different areas where we would patrol. So basically we did the same thing as those guys on the inside of that. Believe me, we were just as cold in the wintertime.
Oh, I never thought of Germany. Yeah, because I don't think it's cold there, but it fucking gets cold.
Oh, it definitely gets cold there.
And so you were how many years doing the dog handling type thing?
So I got out in 1980. That was the first time I met my husband when I was over there.
3 years.
And then we got married. Yeah, so only did 3 years. And then basically what we were doing is then I supported his career. Then he retired. And then, so I was kind of the domestic goddess for the longest time. And then I did, I don't want to say odd jobs. I did, I'd stocked shelves. I did admin stuff. I did all sorts of oddball things. Then I went to nursing school because I was kind of tired every time we would move that I would have to start off at the bottom. So I decided that I wanted to become a nurse. And so then I went to nursing school. I was a civilian nurse for a while, and then I came back on active duty. in 2001 in the Army. And again, it was my options were limited because I'd had this huge break in service and I was 41 years old.
Wow.
So this was before 9/11. I came back in just before 9/11. So the Air Force didn't want me because I was too old. The Navy marginally wanted me, but I had a recruiter who was not very interested in me. So then really my only option again was the Army. So I came back on active duty. Later on, I would have been much more appealing to the Air Force, for example, because, then they were taking all sorts of nurses. But that was kind of my entry back into the Army, was being able to be a nurse. So I was a critical care nurse at a trauma center in Tucson.
Wow. So that was civilian center, trauma center, you got into ICU. And then did you start as a lieutenant or did you go straight to captain because of your years experience?
No, I started off as a first lieutenant.
Oh.
And then my first duty assignment was Tripler, which is where I met you.
What? I didn't know you spent all that time there. Dang, you spent... Because I got there in 2003 at Tripler and then left in 2008, I think it was. Because I went to Iraq for 15 months and I came back at the very end and they gave me a month off and I left for somewhere else. Dang. So I didn't realize.
Yeah, so I left in 2005 and the deputy chief of nursing, she convinced me that I should go off to grad school, which I had no intention. I was going to stay in Hawaii for as long as I possibly could because I was having a grand old time. But yeah, I got there the very end of 2001, and then I left the middle of 2005.
Hang, I don't remember. Yeah, and then Tom was he was in the military, but he did something special like secret stuff and.
Yeah, he was a nuke weapons officer, which is where I had met him, when I was at MISAL. And then later on, he became, he had a break in service, and then he came back in as enlisted because he had been a warrant officer. So he came back in as enlisted and then was working for Intelligence Command as an in-service recruiter, but then doing also the secret squirrel stuff. And so, yeah, and he retired in 1996, and I think he had something like 27 years in. So then we were out of the military for a while and kind of living the American dream. Had a great house, had a pool.
Oh my God!
And all those kind of good things. And then I had a midlife crisis, and then came back on active duty.
Did he influence you with your preparation type stuff at any time with his secret stuff or what he learned, or just as time went on, like when you joined the Army, you just start thinking about prepping?
Oh, no. That was all me. And I didn't start right away. I mean, I started later on. Let me think. When did I start? Actually, I think in a way I started when he was in the military and way before I came on active duty, and I started trying to learn how to do things the old ways, looking up old recipes and how to build, cook things from scratch and then later on I learned how to can and preserve and pickle, and I was baking my own bread, making my own yogurt, making my own peanut butter, all that kind of stuff. And then I got a dehydrator, and I was dehydrating everything in sight, which I loved greatly. But yeah, I canned and pickled and preserved and pressure canned, and then we started accumulating stuff. I think that was the first time I was in Alaska. I started really getting into it. Go ahead.
How many years were you in the Army before you decided to do the nurse practitioner role and go back to college again?
So it was like this. The program I went to was at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and they had a dual program for clinical nurse specialist and acute care nurse practitioner. It was a dual program. And the reason I went to that particular program is that one of the clinical nurse specialists who worked there, she had been one at the hospital in Tucson that I had worked at, and I had really just completely admired her. And I'd worked with her husband. He was a surgeon there at that hospital when I was working in that trauma ICU. Then they had moved to Baltimore. So she was faculty at the university, and I was just so tickled by the thought of being reunited with her because I thought she was so great.
Huh.
And then there was this dual program. So the Army sent me for the clinical nurse specialist, but then I sat for both exams. Well, then the problem was is that the Army didn't recognize the acute care nurse practitioner, so I had to kind of fight tooth and nail to get that. And then I had to do the family nurse practitioner postmasters on my own.
What?
When I was in Alaska. Yes, the first time. Yeah, I had to do my postmasters. So that was the first time I was in Alaska. Then I got reclassified when I was stationed in, let's see, where did I go? I went to Fort Huachuca after that, and that was my first assignment where I was actually assigned as a nurse practitioner. Before that, I'd been kind of working around the corners, dependent on the kindness of others. So then
you were 66 Papa, then a family?
Yes, then I became vet because they didn't recognize the acute care.
What?
And I know the other services did recognize the acute care, but then it was circumstances. I just didn't. I wasn't able to practice. So I figured if I can't beat them, join them, and it's the old. Instead of continuing to curse the darkness, light a candle, that type of thing. So I lit the family nurse practitioner candle. Then I became a nurse practitioner, and I was stationed at Fort Huachuca, and I ran a soldier clinic there. And then I went back to Alaska, and then as a nurse practitioner, and I ran a soldier clinic there. And then Tom died, and I worked over in the regular clinic, and then I decided I was going to retire. But after he died, I had to vet my plans, and I was stationed in Colorado. Now, all along there, when we were in Alaska.
My God, I followed you everywhere.
You kind of did. But, when the power goes out, you need to have food or you need to have options. So we had all of this food. I mean, I had canned things. I had dehydrated things. I would pickle. The basement was loaded up with big buckets of rice, everything that you can imagine. I mean, I had down there. And that's something that I always really enjoyed doing. So I was able to take most of that with me when I went to Colorado, but then and I would continue doing it in Colorado. So I was, I had the vacuum sealer. So I had all these bags of food and experimenting with things. And I had, like I said, I'd started that the first time the first time we were in Alaska. And I used to run that dehydrator all the time. Started experimenting with making meals and then dehydrating the meals so that you just can add water to them. So, made my own ketchup, did all that kind of stuff. So when I made my own ketchup, it's not a great thing, but. So made jerky by the pounds and thinking, oh my God, I'm saving so much money because you can save so much money. So when I was in Colorado, I was doing all that. But then when I retired from the Army, and that's when I decided to go, full-time van life, didn't find my place. I had to give up so much of it because the movers wouldn't store it because I had to have my stuff stored.
Oh.
Well, so now, one thing I have to say, because you've known me for a long time, and that I get a little worried about the doings in the world, is that I got really kind of stressed last year because as I was traveling, I go into grocery stores and there'd be shelves that were empty. And then there were the whole COVID thing had happened, and I really had ramped up my production then because one thing I was so proud of is that when everybody was complaining about no toilet paper, I had 18 rolls. So, and I would send pictures of my rolls of toilet paper to people.
I think the two things that scared me the most or bothered me was a lack of toilet paper and lack of SpaghettiOs with Franks. I'd never ate them, but I craved them once I couldn't have them. I didn't even care about them, but I had to have them. And then Amazon wouldn't deliver them. I was like out of my mind. It's like when I was in Iraq, I just had to have stupid things like yellow zingers with frosting. Never cared for them before, but when I couldn't have it, it just got in my mind. I'm like, I became fixated. And so,
isn't that amazing when you're deployed about the things that you want that you would never eat any other time?
That's correct.
Yeah, it was like, oh my God, I must have it. Especially when people around me I never ate candy, but Skittles were a currency over there.
That's funny. They started putting them in the new MREs, I believe. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Freaking the new kids have all these nice things. I'm like, that wasn't like the old brown MREs or the C rations, anything like that.
Oh. So speaking of nice things, so my grandson just graduated from infantry school this past week. And so my daughter and we drove up to Georgia for the graduation. So we were kind of helping him put his duffel bags together. Do you know, though, that they have the duffel bags? They have a zipper that goes lengthwise. And, I mean, they've got straps and handles all over the place, as opposed to with us, the stupid duffel bags that only open from the top. And if you need something from the bottom, well, you're kind of hosed.
What's funny you say that, because when I was going to Iraq, I bought one of those special things that someone made, very special, like a zipper that goes all the way up and down. I show up with it, and they said, no, you're not allowed to have a zipper because that pops open everything, so you have to have only the top. And I'm like, are you kidding? Another rule, and now they're allowing it. That drives me crazy. Oh, my God.
Well, they also have straps. They also have cinched straps that, two on the top and two on the bottom. I mean, all over the place.
What?
And you remember how we used to have to cinch how we used to have to stack our duffel bags?
Yep.
And then it was always a pain in the neck to pull them out when they were stacked.
Yep.
So now they've got a handle on both ends. So all you have to do is just grab that handle and pull straight out. Isn't that awesome? Where was that when we were in?
Oh, my God, that's so simple. But it's such a genius idea.
I completely want one, but I don't need one, but I really want one now. So now I've been really ramping up the prepper stuff since I moved into my house last August, and then I got my stuff in January. I guess I kind of waited to see if I was really going to commit to my house, which was kind of silly, but I had that.
You've
and
moved to Florida.
So
the number one hurricane capital in the world.
Well, so let me tell you about that. So I thought so too, but I have these friends who are going to retire to Florida, and I said the same exact thing. So my friend's husband is this great researcher, even more than me. So they pulled out the statistics and they pulled out the papers and the research, and I saw that so there's a lot of hurricanes in Florida, except for a few places. So there's this band that goes kind of, from north and south of Tampa, kind of across the state over towards Orlando. And towards Orlando, that hardly has any hurricanes. So like in the last 100 years, maybe 4 hurricanes.
Oh. And
down the center of the state, no hurricanes. So the majority of the hurricanes are then
the coast. Okay.
They're north, like up around Pensacola, then along the coast, and then south by Miami. They have a lot. Their weather is profound. So then I came here. And in fact, the week after I moved into my house, Hurricane Ian was coming this way. And I thought, just my luck. I close on this damn house, and it's going to get blown off its foundation within a week of me buying it. And it's like, couldn't this have happened like a week ago? Well, then, sure enough, the hurricane moved south. And, I mean, it was making a beeline for Tampa Bay. And so I was prepping my stuff, and I was being very, I didn't have anything. So I was pre-cooking foods. I was putting them in the freezer. I was a little optimistic about how well my freezer would be able to hold the, cold foods.
Yeah.
And, so I had to eat a lot of foods pretty quickly because they were thawing. So I thought, they've got to do everything. Well, I was. I mean, I ate a lot of pork chops. I mean, like 3 times a day, so that they wouldn't go, so they wouldn't go bad. And well, then I got my stuff, and so I started dehydrating again. But and I started buying things like there's this food products. Like, I bought it off of Amazon. They come in pellets, and they're supposed to be good flavored stuff. So you just have one a meal, and it can sustain you. So it comes in a small box, and I'm subscribing to that now. I
when
really
you
started
say
paying attention.
small pellets, are these things called pills? Is it called a multivitamin by chance? No, what is that?
No, I can't.
What is this
Okay,
thing you're talking about?
so I'm actually subscribing to it because it's not cheap. Because those things are not cheap. I'm going to tell you exactly what they are. But oh yes, so it is called Compact Provisions, Emergency Food Supply, and Non-Perishable Survival Rations. And so for disaster kits, and it's 2,385 calories and 72 grams of protein per box.
Damn.
So there's nine bars per box, and one box feeds one adult for one day. And it's 2,300 calories. So I mean, this is really survival stuff. It's got a 5-year shelf life. But one of the reasons I got this is because I figured, what do I need in a bug out bag? And what do I want to carry that will be able to sustain me and not weigh too much? So I'm getting these. So I'm subscribing to it, and I'm getting another box every like 2 to 3 months or so, and I'm just kind of slowly building up that stash. But okay, so I still have my dehydrator, and I don't have a lot of room in my house because I downsized to a smaller house because I'm on my own. But I bought a freeze dehydrator, which has been on my bucket list for like forever. And I got it maybe 2.5 months ago, and I started using this.
So explain what that does. What is a freeze dehydrator?
So a freeze dehydrator, you know how when you can go into the store and to like a camping store or an outdoor store, and you go to the foods, and they have the trail foods that come in those that are freeze-dried foods, freeze-dried meals. They're like $10 for a meal.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous and very expensive. And you get the freeze-dried ice cream. And so what a freeze dryer does is that it drops the temperature to, very low, so below zero in a lot of cases. And then it forms this very high vacuum. And it takes forever, but what it does is it pulls all the moisture out of the product that's in there. The interesting part about that is it does not change the properties of the product. So in other words, it's still basically the same size. It doesn't lose any nutrition, and it doesn't cook it or anything like that. But it decreases the weight significantly, and if you store it properly, if you've done it properly, you can store these foods for up to 25 years. So...
But you have to keep it in the freezer.
I mean, no. It's completely dehydrated.
Oh.
So you put it into Mylar bags with like oxygen absorbers, and then you seal that, and then you just stash it away. So I've been busily freeze drying things. I mean, it takes a long time for these things. So I have a regular dehydrator, and what a regular dehydrator does is it has a fan that operates, and it has a heater. So depending on the type of food that you have, you dial in the temperature. So with fruit and vegetables, it was like 125, 135. With herbs, it'd be like a 95, 90 or something. And then with meats, it'd be like 160. So basically what you're doing is you're cooking the food while the fan is also removing the moisture. So So the food does not reconstitute as well. As a matter of fact, it doesn't reconstitute nicely. The nice thing is that you can cook with it, and it makes perfectly good, nutritious foods. It just won't reconstitute exactly in the same way. So I was doing that for years, and there's this gal on the internet. I think she's Mormon. She has all of these dehydrators, the regular dehydrators, and so she would do these videos. And so I learned how to do that.
Ah.
And one thing I learned, because a lot of people don't realize, so one thing I learned is that a lot of people think that fresh food is the best food, but fresh food is picked so that it can survive transport to actually then make it into a store. So unless you're buying from a farm stand where the food got picked within the last day or two, you're not getting things at the peak of freshness and flavor and nutrition. So what I learned from her was that she would get bags of frozen food, and she would then dehydrate them. She'd put them right out on the screens, and then she'd dehydrate them. So I could take like a 2-pound bag of corn, and I dehydrate it down, and it would fit into a quart jar, which was awesome. And I would take frozen carrots, and I would dehydrate them down. And then she was also doing meals. So I was doing things like making snacks for my dog. I was taking sweet potatoes, I'd cook them up a little bit, and I'd smash them, and then I would dehydrate them, and my dog loved them. I dehydrated meat snacks, like liver.
Okay, just want to make sure you're giving them meat snacks and not vegan stuff.
No. See, but you can buy those kind of snacks in the store, and they're not cheap. So, but let me tell you, so this regular this freeze dryer though, oh my God. So you just add a little bit of water to it, and it reconstitutes to its original form.
What?
So you have the same texture. You have the same, yes. I mean, it is pretty much, that's about everything. And it's like wonderful. One thing that I did is that I had gotten, I think from Sprouts, there was like 2 pounds of organic ginger. So I chopped that all up. And what I had done is I had been creating I made this ginger liqueur. So I had all this ginger left over after I strained it out, and I didn't want to waste it because it's perfectly good ginger. Well, so I did. I took that and freeze-dried it when I finally had this freeze-dried. It had been taking up real estate in my refrigerator for months. And so I dehydrated it, and I thought, oh, man, I screwed this up because it didn't smell like much. It kind of looked very papery because this was still early on. But then I took some out and put it in a cup, and I added a little bit of water to it. Let me tell you what, exactly like regular chopped ginger. Tasted the same, felt the same. It was awesome. So now I've got this in a pint jar and a quart jar, and it's quite lovely. Another thing I did, gotta love Costco. I got a big jar of the pickled jalapenos, a gallon jar. So I drained them all off, and then so they want you to freeze things ahead of time because that saves you time. The freeze dryer I got can hold up to 16 pounds of food, so Jesus. I ended up putting little jalapenos all over these sheets, and I put it in there. Now I dehydrated them all down. They fit into much less space, but they rehydrate back to that consistency. So they're really good, even though they're pickled. They're really good for flavoring foods. And then, well, yeah, they give, but see, you got to think about this. When people think that when you are in a survival situation, beans and rice, that's all you need, beans and rice. And technically, yes, you do, but it's going to get very boring. And food also improves morale and mood. And you have to be able to enjoy food sometimes. It has to have flavor. So what I'm doing is I'm creating opportunities for flavor so that when I am in that kind of position, that my food is a little bit more interesting, that I can flavor it. So I also made meals. I, cooked up rice. I had a bunch of hamburger and mushrooms and vegetables. And I cooked that all up and dehydrated that. So now I have these in these Mylar bags. So I've got maybe something like 10 meals now that are already pre-done. All I have to do is just add a little bit of water to them and they will rehydrate. I've just opened the bag up and then you can either pull some out and then, or just add water to it.
Now,
and I'm kind of anticipating that there's going to be a problem.
I bought a bucket, we'll call it, like it's a square plastic white bucket. And this is where I forget, Four Patriots, My Patriots, I forgot where anyways, I bought this box of food that came with like 32 meals for 3 months or something. And like I bought extra like 24 black puddings. Do you still buy those things or do you just do strictly just freeze-dried dehydration?
Well, I have bought foods that are dry, but I don't like to pay the price that they are. And then also, I don't buy the ones that are all combined because I don't want them to tell me what to eat because there's foods in there that I don't necessarily eat all the time. So I would eat all the things that, well, I mean, I eat the beef stroganoff, but for example, I'm not a big mac and cheese person.
Oh my God, that's all they serve.
Yeah, I know. Well, so get this. Another thing from a prepper standpoint, you can go to Walmart and most Walmarts they have these dehydrated food cans. They're like number 10 size cans that have dehydrated food. So like, for example, August and Brands has dehydrated cheese. And they have one that's just a regular dried cheddar cheese, and they have one that's a cheese powder, which I swear to you is exactly like Kraft mac and cheese. But I ended up ordering online for packages of pure powdered cheddar cheese. So that keeps, I repackage it so that it stays because it comes in a regular plastic bag. You can get dehydrated butter. You can get dehydrated eggs. Now, I get the whole eggs because you can cook with those. So you just rehydrate them. And I realized that when you rehydrate them and you can make omelets and scrambled eggs and the likes, it's exactly like the stuff that we would get in our dining facility when we said we wanted an omelet and they were scooping that yellow stuff out of the bucket. Yeah. I thought it was always eggs. No, it's dried eggs. It tastes just like it. But then you can use those eggs and you can make pancakes. You can make eggs. You can make omelets, frittatas. You can do all this different stuff with that. It lasts you a very long time because it's third of a cup, I think it is, per one egg. One thing that I want to do, and they have things like dehydrated celery, because dehydrated celery, I mean, it's kind of a pain in the neck to make. They have dehydrated potatoes. I've done my own potatoes before. I'm not as successful at dehydrating potatoes, but I haven't freeze-dried them yet. But there's also brands where if you go to Costco or Sam's Club, they have the dehydrated hash browns, which is exactly what they use in diners. They taste very good. So I have a big container of that. I'm going to buy more. So what you can do is you can rehydrate to make hash browns. You can use that for making soup. You can make it for mashing up and stews. So it's a very versatile food. So you can get the August and Brands. They have. There's other companies, like the Life brand, I think it is, or Thrive. Those can be pretty expensive, especially when you're going into freeze-dried territory. So, and if you're trying to look for meat is very, very expensive if you buy it, if dehydrated already. But I went to the store and I got, Costco, and I got a big beef roast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook that up. And I've got this recipe for how to make your own roast beef for very inexpensive. So what I'll do is I will do my cooking up, then I'll slice it, and I'm going to then freeze it and dehydrate it, and then I'm going to package it. So then I'm going to have my meat. So, so the thing is it saves money. Now, I will grant you that a freeze dryer is wicked expensive.
Yeah, I saw the price when you showed it
Wicked
to me.
expensive.
Oof.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely bucket list stuff. But I am using it like mad. The other thing you can do with them. So the advantage you have. So for example, if you're freeze drying herbs, they're not going to lose any of their properties. People are actually starting to buy freeze dryers more, and they're using them to sustain a business. So what they do is they
Oh.
freeze dry their stuff and then they're selling it. One of the big brisk businesses right now is freeze drying candy, because what it does is some of the candies, it changes their properties and they taste completely different. So for
What?
example, I just freeze dried a big giant bucket of Skittles. So what they do is they kind of explode a little bit and they turn very foamy. They're kind of a crispiness. They're not like regular Skittles anymore. And they look like tiny miniature pool balls. Then I dehydrated gummy worms. They've got this crispiness. I freeze dried marshmallows, and they develop the same consistency as those little marshmallows that are in Lucky Charms.
You've become some evil James Bond villain dehydration lady.
Oh, I
You know,
truly have been, and I mean, like for example, I got a 10 from Costco, and I chopped those all up. I'm going to dehydrate. I have 10 pounds of onions that are dehydrated and that I can then use for the next 10 years. I mean, I can cycle through. And I got a chopper so that it would chop faster. I bought a, 2-pound bag of garlic. And so I roasted that up. I'm going to freeze dry that. I buy frozen fruit and I freeze dry that, because if you look at some of the freeze dried fruit that is out there, very, very expensive.
Yes.
But I can do it myself. I can freeze dry, 16 pounds of fruit, and I put it in my Mylar bags and seal it up, and I'm good to go. And it's lightweight. It's very lightweight. So I still RV. I'm going to be taking a lot of this stuff with me, so I don't have to worry about cans, and I don't have to worry about jars.
That's true. You just have a tote type thing in Iraq, those square boxes.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, all I have to do is just load up the RV with a lot of these dried foods, especially things like condiments like I haven't freeze dried pickles yet. That's still on my my list. Oh, when you go on YouTube, because all good things are on YouTube. There's this website, this guy called Retired at 40, I think. So I think he must have been military. And so I've learned a lot of the things that he does for freeze drying. I mean, he's like big time. He tests them out, and I watch these different people who prep and who freeze dry their foods. So the good thing is that this stuff lasts longer. There are people who have jars in their basements for like 20 years, and they've kind of got to worry about what's going on inside them. But with regular food and meat, all this stuff, and I can pull it out of. I can buy things in bulk that are frozen or fresh. I can process them. I can freeze dry them. It's not taking up real estate in a refrigerator. And it's not taking up real estate in a freezer, because I don't have a freezer right now. My house is pretty small. I haven't quite figured out where I would put a small freezer. But no, so I have these buckets that I got, and food grade buckets with lids, and I've got the stuff stored in them. And yeah, so I keep on going. I mean, I freeze dried mushrooms. I opened up cans of mushrooms and that were on sale, and I put those out and I dehydrated those. So yeah, so I have the capability of feeding myself, and actually happily so.
A while back, we had discussed water purification because I went down to some foreign countries, and I ended up buying. I've already had my Catadine little pump. It's like in a little bottle, like a Nalgene bottle, and then I bought something on the internet that was. You put dirty water in it, then you push it down, and the filter sucks up all the dirty crap, and you can get like 1,000 gallons out of it. What do you use for water purification? There was a large metal thing you showed me on Amazon or one of the websites.
So I have a Berkey water filter.
What's it called, Berkey?
And it's called a Berkey, and it's very popular. And I first became familiar with it through the van life videos, because a lot of van lifers, a lot of full-time RVers use Berkey.
Oh.
So I looked into it, and I thought I got the smallest size one at the time. It was a travel Berkey, 1.5 gallons, because I knew I was going to be traveling also all over the country, and I had to be able to provide water for the pets and for myself. And the way they advertised it is basically, you can dip water out of a puddle and put it in there, or out of a lake. It will clean everything out, and you can drink it. And I've actually kind of tested that. And and I have to tell you, no matter where I went in the country, the water always tasted the same, and it was always fine. However, recently, over the last, 6 months, Berkey's being sued now, because apparently when people started investigating them and testing, they didn't have really any way to back up their claims. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking for a different water filter. I found one that's in a regular jug. It's not a regular aqua filter. I can't remember what the name is, but it's supposed to be good for something like 500 gallons or something. And I figure if I drink 1 gallon a day and I drink the pets, the only pain in the neck is I have to fill it up more often. So from a water purifier, and then I also got the little pump kind. But you have to figure, a lot of people get the life straw. I have a life straw as well for an emergency. But how are you going to take care of your pets? You have to have a way. If you have pets or you have small children or infants or something, how can you get them to drink through a straw? You have to be able to get clean water into a container, so that you then can pass it on to people who are unable to use that. Not only that, but a life straw is really only good for one person. You have to get it for multiple people. So if you have a special container that can like your filter that can get the dirty water out, to clean that out, you can use that for multiple people in your household and for your pets.
If you're a true survivalist, you just take it into your own mouth, and like a mother bird, you just spit it into your kid's mouth, and they'll be fine.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, I'm glad I don't have to, chew food and spit it into my kids' mouths anymore.
So there's this.
Digest it with my enzymes. As some people do, actually.
I saw the the Berkey thing you showed me, and then I went online. I'm like, I can't afford that. So I ended up going with this bag that you put all your dirty water in. Then it goes into it's like an IV type thing. Then there's a size, looks like a can. It's smaller than a can of vegetables or something. And then it filters it out really good in there. And then it goes into another bag and then out again. And then that's how you get your water. It's like a filter system, if you will. You have to hang it.
Yes.
Those seem to be
Yes, I've seen it. I actually looked at them, yes.
They're just like a quarter of the price, cheaper, but you just have to put the water in and drain it out. It's like an IV, slowly does it. But the filters last for a long time, so I thought if I needed that. And then do you have the propane for the stove? Like if you're not able to get propane in the future in a truly prepper situation, like a year-long type thing, 3 months, you don't have any system. Do you have any cooking, like heat to cook things?
Yes. Okay, so propane. Now, this is something that I discovered when I was stationed in Colorado. Remember that winter that was so cold when I was living in that historic house, which meant I had no insulation at all. And none. And in fact, it was so cold that I had to put my dog in boarding, and and there was no propane to be found anywhere, because outdoor dining was starting to come back into play, and all of the restaurants were buying propane. So there was no propane to be had.
Oh my God, I never
So I bought
a
kerosene heater. Yeah, so I bought a kerosene heater that I could use inside and out. And I blockaded off most of my house, and I lived in the kitchen and in my bedroom and just myself. My water pipes froze, and I had to, my pipes froze, and I had to get water from my neighbor because I had not anticipated it got colder than I had planned it on being. So I ended up getting, oh gosh, so I'm not going to depend on propane. I got a little stove that I don't remember the name of right off the top of my head. Anyway, so what it does is it folds down and it can use multiple fuels. So you open it up, it can use wood, it can use charcoal, it can use pellets, paper, I mean, multiple things. And so it opens up, and then you can put like a little pan on top of it and then cook on it, and then can collapse down again, and you have your stove. So I'm not going to, I have some cans of propane, some small ones, but they're not going to last. So I'm not going to depend on them. So I have that separate. And then I bought, and instead of regular, and then I found these great pellets that they have at one of the health outdoor stores that is made out of coconut. And so it's called Tropical Ignition. It's 100% natural coconut charcoal briquettes, lasts longer, burns hotter. And so there's a bunch of them in this container. So I figure I could just use one of them to do whatever cooking I have. And so the thing is that if I have some food, and if I need to do some cooking, or if I need to cook boil water, here it is. It's called a firebox. That's what I have. And they're not cheap, but I was doing this. So there's this show on Netflix called Southern Survival. It was only on for one season. I'm telling you, I watch all this stuff. The interesting thing about these people is it's a little team of people, and what they do is each show is a different theme. So, for example, one of them might be, okay, you've got an intruder coming into your home. How are you going to protect yourself, or how are you going to get out of this mess? One of them is, okay, you're camping and you're lost and you can't get out. What would you have with you? And so they tested all these little different kinds of stoves. So this firebox, really, it is, it's a full size one. It's not 100%. It's definitely not cheap. It's a little camp stove, wood burning, collapsible, portable, and and then the other thing you can do with it has these little rods that you can put across the top. What you can also do is, let's say you got some meat, you can grill that meat over the little fire that you have. The other thing is that it has a hole in one of the plates, so you can put like one of your camping cups down into it, and it can boil your water super fast.
That's nice.
So what they did, they designed this to use the minimum amount of food, and it's based on the technology or the science surrounding a rocket stove. And I found it when I was looking for a rocket stove, because and rocket stoves, it's not that they're that expensive, it's just that they're very, very heavy. So it's like a tube, it's like a chimney, and then it has a tube that comes out at an angle. You start this fire, and then you put the branches in, and it feeds. It feeds down, and the fire becomes very, very hot up through this chimney. So you can put a pan on top of it. It also heats your house up. So there's various forms of it called a rocket stove. So I found this. Yeah, so this is kind of a modification or an adaptation of the rocket stove concept, because you can put these little branches or so in, and you can constantly feed in from the side. So I was looking for ease of use, because when the shit hits the fan, people are not going to be thinking clearly. We have all the best intentions, and we think we know stuff. But you have to figure the anxiety and the stress surrounding all that. I'll probably be lucky if I remember my name for 5 days. But so I wanted things that are completely easy to use. So that's why I have these foods. All I have to do is add water. I mean, I have very easy filters to use that I can then sustain my pets with. And when I buy things, like I buy a carrier for my cat, I look at it. How can I transport it if I have to bug out? And the advantage is I have a small RV, but the thing is, your RV is only as good as long as you have gasoline. And another thing that people forget is that, oh, yeah, I've got my car, I can escape. If there is no power, if there's no power at gas stations, you can't pump gas.
Yep.
And so those are all things to consider.
One of the things I talked with that I learned actually from Colonel Miller, he's in charge of Fortitude Ranch. He started a business in which he's starting to, franchise out. And so there's like 14 places across America where these people get together and they're survivalist and you live in a community type thing. Anyways, we were talking about EMPs, electromagnetic pulse, and every book I've read, every movie I've seen, boof, the pulse hits, all cars go out. He said that's untrue. He worked with Air Force Strategic Air Command. He worked in some top secret things. He was an intelligence officer. He spoke with the engineers concerning this because he had to do his dissertation for his doctorates for Harvard, some little college in the East Coast, was about underground nuclear and protection and all that. Anyways, it acts almost like a Faraday cage, so not all cars will be out. Not the old cars either. I'm talking the new cars that have electronics in them. They're not going out. The problem is they will still become clunkers, just like you said, they'll become a brick because you can't get the electricity. You can't suck the gas out of the large underground at the gas station. Like if you could, it's just going to be a mess because people are going to shoot and kill for, he said, instead of 3 days, I suspect 2 days the stores will be barren. He said hours. Within hours, people will raid the stores and it'll be gone. And then marauders will be the dangerous thing on the road. And so the other thing I was going to ask, do you have handgun and shotgun, or what is your preference? Do you like Sig Sauer, Glock, or what do you do?
Well, I've got a Sig and a 9mm. That's kind of my go-to. But I have a few other things, and I've got a couple of shotguns, and I've got a couple of rifles as well. But I'm going to be expanding my collection to, again, ease of use. Because I'm thinking about what can I do to one of them is going to be I'm going to be looking at an AR-15 because I was reading something. The good point is that woman was trying to teach her mother how to shoot. Woman couldn't, again, the mother couldn't hit the target to save her soul, but the daughter put the AR-15 in her hands, and it's like, son of a gun, mom hit the target. So and like Florida's become a constitutional carry state, so we can now conceal carry, I think, as of 1 July.
So I have all these different ammos I can stock up on. Good for trading. Colonel Miller was telling me that, because I asked him about gold backs. It's this new thing I found. It's been around for years, but it's gold in like $1 or $10 or $50 forms. It's just a gold dollar, but it's made of literal gold. And so you can exchange it like gold and silver, but he's saying no. That's something that people used to do, but he doesn't like that idea of like using gold and silver to trade. He thinks alcohol, food, ammunition, I thought of cigarettes. I don't know if that would be worth trading for, but people will go on that, they get.
It probably will. I mean, it probably will be. I mean, people will probably start picking up those. I think it would become currency again. I think it would. I do. I mean, I think he has a very good point. I mean, but the thing is, I've
little dime sized.
Yes.
And it was like $1,800. I'm like, what the fuck? It's like the size of a dime. Gold is so expensive. So if you have a literal gold brick, oh my God, oh my God. Yeah, I'll never be able to afford a gold brick. My gold brick's gonna be the size of a pencil eraser.
But you have to think you have to figure that's not very practical either, because you can't take a gold brick to the local trading post and say, shave off an amount of money. And so I was reading that they actually recommended that you get gold and silver in things that are like very small currencies because the people recognize it and they're
the
not
gold
going to
backs is
question
what
it.
they equate it to. So it's literally a dollar bill and it's bendable, but it's
Mhm,
gold. It's literally the color of gold. It is literal gold,
mhm,
and so it's the weight of it. So literally, it's the weight
mhm.
in gold, and so the gold backs are the way to do it. But if you wanted to for the future, if you have to get a bunch of money and put it into something, a gold
Yeah.
bricks or silver is a little better, and then you can get smaller account amounts if you want to trade things. But just in case they shut down your bank accounts, you'll always be able to go to a gold exchange in town, and
Yeah.
they'll exchange it for you cash. You have to pay. I
And
just thought. I don't know if the wall will be as effective because they're going to be able to find a way around it. But if we have a moving wall, and I'll call it the military, to protect our country against foreign invaders, because that's what it seems like, and because I'm red on the wall, I'm red on guns, I'm red on certain things, but the wall needs to be of the military, state. I don't care if it's the Guard or Reserves. I don't know which one handles that, but not the Border Patrol because their hands are tied. The military needs to go down there, catch people that are coming across. I don't know. There's no answer to this. There's no right or wrong. It's just like we don't know what to do, so people just ignore it. But if you do
mm,
anything and get involved, then you're a horrible person. So I'm like,
yeah,
this is a tough one. Oh, this is a no win situation.
but kind of worry about the state of our of where we're going, and I want to be prepared because when the time comes, it's like your friend said, it's only going to be a couple of days, and we're not going to necessarily be able to count on our neighbors. People think, oh yeah, well, our neighborhood will band together. No, it will not. And that's
Well,
another thing. When you're thinking about something like generators, so I'm buying solar generators because solar generators can be used inside a house. They don't require gasoline. You recharge them with solar panels,
that's smart.
and nobody can hear them
That's smart.
because when you have a regular generator, it's supposed to be outside because if you have it inside, then you're going to die, and people do every year. But they're going to hear it, and even if you have it chained down, there's going to be people who have no power, people who have small children, people who want to protect their families. They're just going to do whatever it takes to survive, and if it means taking your generator away from you, they're going to do it. So if I have a solar generator and people don't know that I have a generator, it's going to be a little harder for them to come get it.
That's what Colonel Miller was talking about. The Marauders will be the dangerous. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
It was called Patrick Swayze in a movie called oh my God, Red Dawn, in which the Cubans and
Okay, I
the
remember
Russians come
that one.
over, and all of a sudden we're
Yep.
fighting a foreign invader. It's going to be our own people. It's going to be marauders, like little gangs of cartel people or motorcycle gangs. They're going to get
Yes.
desperate. They're going to get their guns. They're going to come in force. And unless you have the community, like 8 neighbors that are military and have guns and have a plan, it's not going to go so well. I was talking to my Mormon
No,
neighbor.
it's not. Yeah, I mean, and you have to have. I mean, this is where the compound idea is actually very helpful, and this is where like when COVID happened, it's like I guess those people up in Idaho in their compounds were right after all. But yeah, you have to get with like-minded people who are all on the same sheet of music because when everything hits the fan and people aren't eating, they're going to be looking for food no matter where it is, and you have to be able to defend yourself from it, from people who want what you have,
And that's where
which is unfortunate. But the thing is people say, oh no, humans won't do that. No,
it's savagery
it's
at that point.
survival of the
Yes.
fittest. It is. It's survival of the fittest. It's something natural. So that's why when people would screw up and they do things like when I was still on active duty and I was in leadership positions and people would do boneheaded things. I mean, sometimes they'd really do like super boneheaded things. People would say, well, aren't you mad at them? I said, no, what they did, it's human nature. I can't get mad at human nature. Now, I can act on it, but I can't get mad at them. I mean, they were just doing what humans would do because it's not really, when you get down to it, it's not been that long really that we've come out of caves.
Yeah,
But
that's nothing.
because, well, when you think about it, the majority of this world, the people do not have flush toilets. We like to think we're all so civilized and everything, but really, when things fail, we're the ones who are going to be dying left and right, and it's the people who are out living wherever with their porta potties or the holes dug in the ground who are going to be surviving
Used
because
to
they
it.
know how to survive. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, do you have a medical kit on you, like to take care of yourself or your dog or anything, like sutures, or because you're medical and like survival
Well,
things?
I do have a small, kit of survival stuff with like sutures and antiseptics and stuff like that. Now there is a company that sells antibiotic kits, and I'm going to
What?
be getting one of those as well. Yes,
Have
you
you ever
can.
heard of Doom and Bloom? It's a nurse, Amy, and a Dr. Bones. It's they do survival classes and they have bags they sell. I'm trying
Oh,
to get them.
really?
I'm trying to get them on my podcast right now because I really like what they're putting out there. But and they teach you how to do stuff because that's going to be one of the survival. I know what to do, you know what to do, but other people don't. So my neighbors often depend because I own my own family practice, so they have me come over and just do, hey, can I get some antibiotics? Because I've been, that type of thing. But when the shit hits the fan,
Uh,
if you get a UTI, oh my God, it's death time. It's sepsis. You get, what I'm
yes,
saying? It's like life and death,
yes.
simple antibiotics. They didn't have that back in the day. Penicillin didn't exist. So if you're a medical person, if you don't have it, that's a trading thing in itself. What are you willing to trade if I save your life? And your
Yes.
life's worth
Well, I
something,
mean, and that is actually a commodity. I mean, the ability to take care of people who are sick or injured is definitely a commodity. And so that will be a commodity that is in demand. And I think that's very smart. And I still am able to do an awful lot. I don't have a lot of supplies, but you know how to stop bleeding, and we know how to take care of stuff and how to keep people healthier, and how to say, okay, well, you got to wash your hands. You got to, clean water, and boil your water first, instead of people who are just going to say, oh no, the water looks clean, and not realizing that no, it's not that clean. But
New
so
one.
that's the kind of stuff. I mean, you are in a great position. I'm not as good a position as you are, in that sense, because you have all those resources readily available. I'm not currently practicing, still debating what I'm going to be doing, what I want to be when I grow up. But you're in a very good position in that capacity. So I want to be on your compound.
Yeah, just the guns and all that, and the medical stuff, and having the antibiotics. They're not going to
Well,
expire after a year. They're not going to be as effective after 5 years, but they're
no,
still going to be effective. And so
no,
it's
but I'm not even thinking about in terms of gun. But I mean,
yeah,
your ability to heal people and to keep people healthy.
yeah.
That is eventually. I mean, after the initial,
So
disaster, after that settles down,
the
what,
simple
6 months, a
stuff,
year, however long? Yeah.
not so. The things that scare me, I think the two most scary things are number one. Oh, well, we'll say three. So someone gets shot in the upper lung. I can put the needle in between second and third, the
Yeah.
intercostal space, and decompress and keep them that way. But they're going to need a physician a surgeon, we'll call them. A general surgeon's going to have to
Yes.
save their life, and the hospitals aren't going to. So once you get shot in the chest, if you have no, we'll call it body armor, you're going to die. If you get shot in the
You're gonna
abdomen,
die.
once again, an
You're
abdomen
gonna
is like
die.
a blown appendix. Once the stool gets into your blood,
Yeah.
sepsis, you have a day or two and you're dead. And so those two things scare me. And then the third thing that I think scares me is, which there's no real cure for, you get hit in the head, you fall down, you have brain bleed, hemorrhage, stroke type thing. You're going to die. And we're not even going to have CTs and MRIs if the shit hits the fan type thing. So it's those three things are bad. Everything else, like the legs and the arm, you can always tourniquet off and you can lose that, but you're still going to live.
Well, but think about this. Um, Way back, they're finding evidence in skeletons from, way back when, of having of brain surgeries, of holes drilled in the trepanation. So holes drilled in the skull must have been to relieve pressure, and that then healed. So I think, and they didn't have CTs. So I think what's going to happen is that people are going to have to tap back into those skills and have to start remembering. It's like, when you're assessing a patient, it's like, okay, well, this pupil is blown, so chances are this side is, there's pressure on this side. Or there's I think people are going to have to go back to the old ways, because the old ways, we didn't have all that stuff. I mean, they found appendicitis without CTs. I mean, I had my appendix out when I was just a kid, and there was no CT. There was labs and assessment. And see, well, because of litigation, that's why there's such a dependence on testing. Because if you get dragged into court and you say, well, I did the CT, which is the standard of care, and they didn't have anything, and then something happens, you say, well, I tried. But I think that's why there's this over reliance on testing, because also there's also better reimbursement. And healthcare that's a whole different area that I'm not going to get into, because aggravates the ever living tar out of me.
If I don't
It
practice
really
defensive
does.
medicine, though, I will
Yep.
get sued. And even though I do my
Well,
best,
yeah, exactly.
we practice
Exactly.
medicine for a reason. People are like, "Why can't you cure
Yep.
me? I've seen 13 people before you, and no one knows
Yep.
what's going on." I'm like, because it's not that easy. It's not like I can just replace your head or your
No.
heart with a Lego and all of a sudden you're better. This is a very complex thing, and you have three different things interacting with one another, and not all medicine is going to cure you. Well, I want to be back the way I was.
Yep.
I'm like, that's not possible all the time. And so it's just so difficult to explain this to people, and that's where I use the humor. I don't know if it always works, but yeah, it's
Well, you always have been popular with your patients. Well, I mean, but the thing is like, for when I was when I was still a very new nurse and I was working in the ICU and I was learning about documentation, I remember to this day that my team leader telling me, he said, Caroline, he said, we don't document for our fellow nurses or for the doctors. He said, we document for a jury. And it's like, oh,
that's the
good
truth.
point. Well, it is, it's very sad. And that was 20 plus years ago. I mean, 25, 26 years ago. So yeah, that's exactly right. Another thing that I really want to know how to do, and I don't know how to do, is I think I really want to learn how to forage. Now, I know some basic plants that are out there, but it's very hard to find a class that teaches about foraging.
Because it's all dependent on, you're in Florida. There's so much flora there that it would have to be specific just for that region, Southeast. And that's...
Well, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. I mean, there's stuff that's very universal. I mean, for example, lamb's quarters, cattails, those are everywhere. There are plants that are everywhere that you can find. Purslane. I mean, there's lots and lots of plants that are very universal. I just really want somebody to show me in the wild and say, yes, this is it. I have lots of books. I have lots of books about everything. And I have lots of books with pictures about plants. But I'm such a visual learning that I would love to have somebody show me, take me out of the woods and say, this is what you do. There used to be, way back when, there was something called Outward Bound. And people would go to these classes, and so they teach them how to live off the land, and then they kind of plop them in somewhere, and then they had to survive for 3 days. They don't have that anymore, unfortunately.
No, I just found 6 websites dealing with just that. Survivalist in Colorado, take you out and help you survive on the land. And that has to be one of their classes, what to do. But I'm always afraid, because I have the Coumadin, I have to take blood thinners, specifically Coumadin.
Oh, yeah.
If I eat dark green anything, I die. Or if I accidentally mix it up with a nightshade, like, I don't know, what if it's the wrong, a potato is a nightshade, my dogs can't eat it. I used to get my dogs French fries. I'm like, oh my God, I've been killing them. It's just like, the more I learn, the more I'm like, oh my God, they're just so dangerous out there. So I'm hesitant to get involved with plants because I just see them as a shroom type thing. There's this guy up in Alaska. Remember him? He got that little van. He ate the wrong potato and it destroyed his stomach, and he was kind of high. And people would go visit his little van. And he was only like a quarter mile from the highway, but he couldn't find it because he was so confused.
Well, people up in Alaska are a little interesting anyway.
My God, I thought the rednecks, what I call, to Arkansas type stuff. Then I went up to Alaska. That's a level of survival and just...
Yeah.
No homeowner association stuff. Like, whatever's in your yard stays. No one cares. It's so cold that people die.
Yep.
The bumsicles, little Indians that got frozen.
Yes.
And the spring come along, and the bumsicles, we'd thaw them out, and they'd be like, damn, a little too much alcohol one night.
Well, yeah, I remember there used to be an encampment across from the Walmart there in the woods. And so, I mean, it was quite a brisk encampment, but every now and then somebody wouldn't find their way back to their sleeping bag at night, and then they would be found frozen to death. And I worked with somebody in the ER up there for a while, and he told me that every spring what happens is when there's a thaw, they try to get to the bodies before the ravens do, because otherwise the ravens find them and they peck their eyes out.
Really smart birds, some of the smartest animals.
Yes, they are. They really, truly are. So, one thing I did like about Alaska is that people are very self-reliant up there and very resilient. And people do not have a victim mentality up there. And people are also willing to help each other out. For example, I could stop up there and pull somebody out of a ditch, and I was pretty sure that nobody's going to shoot me and steal my car. And vice versa. I mean, I'd let somebody pull me out of a ditch up there, and I could be pretty sure that they weren't going to shoot me and steal my car. But down here, if I see somebody in trouble, unfortunately, I'm going to drive by and I'm going to, I'll call for help, but I'm not going to stop, go to hell, because people aren't going to have their medications if they take their medications anyway. I mean, they're not going to have their meds. So you're going to have a lot of people who are decompensating left and right. So, yeah, what are we going to do in those cases when we're dealing with people who are no longer functional? That's going to be an additional issue. And quite frankly, I hadn't even really thought about that until you mentioned that about the gentleman with the schizophrenia in the back of your car. Although you could have figured probably that he had something like that if he was running around half naked in -40 in Alaska.
I just couldn't let him freeze to death. That really would have bothered me. But talking to Colonel Miller yesterday,
that was the smart thing to do. I mean, that was the compassionate thing to do.
Oh, yeah, almost got me killed. But talking to Colonel Miller yesterday, Fortitude Ranch, like a survivalist, ex-Air Force, Harvard grad, and all that. He mentioned, I talked about a movie. I asked, do you watch movies? And we started talking about, there was this movie called The Road with Vito Morganson. I forget his name. Really good actor. And it was about him, his wife, and his daughter. And then he said there was a lesson to learn from that movie. The wife couldn't take it. She shoots her health self at the beginning of the movie because her mental health was bad. She couldn't take the resiliency training and all that. But the son and the dad did survive. And so during a collapse, the mental health of just normal people, forget the crazies, the true people that can't survive without meds. There's going to be people that break down that are normal, that we consider normal, functioning. And there's going to be a huge mental, and I'm not going to lie to you, the mental health crisis I am still dealing with from the isolation of COVID from a year and a half ago. People are still anxious and depressed to a level I've not seen before this, except up in Alaska during the dark times. It's just, and the meds aren't working effectively, and people are just melting down. And that's why we have something called Karen now, a 54-year-old female that loses her marbles, or a Chad, some guy that's like, someone walked through my yard, I'm going to pull out a gun and kill him. Like, just people losing their marbles over stupid shit. Like, after being in Iraq and seeing people die in front of you, and just the ICU, the burn unit, you just see people die and you're like, and these people are complaining because they had to wait 5 minutes in Starbucks and they pulled a gun out. Like, really? Like, you see that. You just, and if something hits the fan, like EMP, nuclear attack, something, electricity goes bad, it's going to be bad times. And the marauders are going to be the ones that...
Well, yeah, you are. You're going to have to be able to defend your home. And the thing is if you have everything, in my opinion, I think if I have everything that I need to survive in my home, to include water, and I still have to work on my water situation. And we had the water situation taken care of up in Alaska, but I haven't figured it out here yet. I'm going to be working on that. But I feel like you have to be prepared to hunker down until the initial the initial disaster is over.
I asked Colonel Miller about this statistic that I've heard in every single survivalist book, or what do you call it? I read these EMP post-apocalyptic books, electromagnetic pulse. So what happens?
Yeah, me too.
And after the first
dystopian novels, I read the dystopian stuff.
Yes, that's exactly what I like. The first 3 months, I think it's 30% of society dies. In the first year, it's 90%. And I said, do you know whether that's true? Because they started breaking things down like that's not true. But he said where that came from was a very specific individual. He was the ex-director of the CIA, a 4-star general, that had came up with that statistic. And they're just kind of guessing this is about how much percent. But he said, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. If electricity goes out, you can't transport food, water, gas, things like that. And there's no food in our stores and people aren't hunters. It's going to break down. And so the people that need medications like me with the Coumadin, if I can't get that, I die. So maybe 3 months I'll be good for, but after the first year, I don't know. And then alcohol will only get me so far. And if I don't have the testing machine, maybe the first year. After that, we start to rebuild. It'll take 5 years to rebuild if our grid goes down electricity-wise. And there's 9 substations that if anyone knows what the 9 substations are, they knock out our whole power grid. There was something up in Canada a few years ago, 2015, I forget the year, in which something went down and they narrowed it down to Ohio where a tree and anyways, it started cascading. So the entire Northeast went out for, I think, 2 or 3 days. And it was bedlam. Think New York City, no electricity. That's scary. and then Ontario.
Well, yeah,
And then,
that's what happened kind of on the coast. I mean, years ago, I mean, it's like the entire East Coast went out, and so for like a week, no power. So that there was a lot of babies that resulted out of that. But then they said, okay, they traced it back to a squirrel that had gotten into some kind of a tripped everything. I don't believe that for a minute.
and
And
that's
in
the
fact, you bring up a very good point because our grid, I think, is vulnerable. And I've heard stories about how people, how our grid is being attacked and that they're foiling that or they're being able to bring it up. But what about like our water supplies? Now, every now and then you hear about somebody who's trying to poison a water supply. But we have these open reservoirs. We have, I mean, where all this water comes from. It wouldn't take a lot. So that's something that concerns me too, which, you know me, I'm kind of,
So
I
I
think
want you to
about these
watch
things.
a movie that I watched that Colonel Miller told me to watch, and it's one of those movies that it's so powerful that they got this little actor, the most likable actor, I'm going to say, his name is Dennis Quaid. Everyone likes this guy. And so
Oh, yeah, I like him.
Dennis Quaid is in this documentary, and it's called Grid Down, Power Up. And I started watching it, and I'm like, everything we're talking about right now is what he talks about in the documentary, and it's all proven facts. Senator and congressmen have known for 40 years that this is going on. Our grid is vulnerable, and we keep
Yes.
reporting on it, and everyone's like, we absolutely agree, but no one does anything. It's like one of those things that's not going to get you reelected because there's no real fervor about it. Americans are reactionary. Well, we know it's going to happen. We know for a fact that Russia and China will use EMP on us because everyone that comes over to defect has all the plans, and it shows them what they're going to do, where they're going to attack. And we're like, oh, yeah, we know, but we're not going to do anything about it until it happens. We're reactionary in that regard. And so I'm like, oh, my God, we know it's coming, but it's like, nah, we won't do it until it hits us. Don't worry about it. We don't want to spend the money on that. So it's like, oh.
Well, but the thing is I think that's what the government maintains power over its population, over its citizenry like that. Because if you let people know that there are issues out there that they should prepare for them, then people will be prepared to defend themselves against anything, to include their government. So the government doesn't want people to be able to defend themselves and to protect themselves and to survive without the government, because that's the government's bread and butter, is having a population that believes that only the government can support it. So there was like 50% of the population is on some kind of government handout in the United States. So that means it's being supported by the other 50%.
Kind of like, does my military retirement, my VA disability, does that count as government handout, or is that I've earned it?
No.
But I don't.
No, that's not.
That.
I'm talking. No. I'm talking about like welfare. I'm talking about food stamps. That kind of stuff. No, you know what you and I have, we earned. We earned the hard
27
way.
years active duty, went through the couple war type things and PTSD, and then the heart, and oh my God, all the problems, and yeah. Yep. It's just like, I don't think I'm sucking off the government, but I technically.
No. You know what? So this is my opinion. So I have issues that I talk to people about. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So, they always ask the obligatory, homicide, suicide question. And I tell them, no, none of both. And I ask them, do you know why I will never kill myself? And they say, no, tell us why. What is it that keeps you from doing that? I said, because I'm going to live as long as I can so that the government will have to pay me my retirement for as long as it can. They are going to pay me as long as I can make, because I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of being able to stop paying me because I couldn't hack it. They owe me, and they're going to pay for it as long as I can possibly hang around. They're gonna pay me because they owe me. And as far as I'm concerned, after what you've been through on multiple levels, you know what? They owe you too.
I still remember the time, because my sense of humor. It's a wry sense of humor, inappropriate after ICU and ER and seeing people die, just messed up in the head.
I know. Yes, so absolutely.
When my heart went bad, and they said he doesn't have a heart problem, he's just faking it. And so they sent me to the psychiatrist like 5 times. And so the 5th time, I think I was at Tripler Army Medical Center. It was a brand new, like 28-year-old psychiatrist student. And I joked around first time. Big mistake. I said, she goes, "Are you hearing voices?" I said, "Yeah, why the fuck did I join the Army?" And she ran to the colonel, the, teacher in charge. He said, "This guy's hearing voices." And well, what did the voices tell him? "Well, why the fuck did I join the Army?" And he goes, "That's it? Did nothing else? And they're not telling him to do anything else?" "Well, no." And he's just fucking with you. Like the little student didn't understand like sarcasm and humor, and they don't. Anything you say gets written down. And I'm like, fuck. I almost, literally that day, almost ended up in a straitjacket in the loony bin, getting, and all of a sudden, I'm not crazy. And then they dart me with a Diazepam, Haldol, Bennett B52, Benadryl type cocktail.
Okay. So let's put this in perspective, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because they didn't determine you were crazy that time didn't mean that you shouldn't be locked up. Okay.
Which is funny. Because they were, the surgeon was like, "No, we're not doing surgery on him. We're going to wait for the VA to do it." And so they said, "Send him to psych." And so after the fifth time, like they were looking for anything, bipolar, schizophrenia. I can say I'm crazy. I act crazy. But as soon as I get in front of them, I'm like, "No, sir, I would never do that." Except the one time I joke around. But anyways, they never found anything. Yeah. I was like thinking, okay, I probably my mom was schizophrenic. Maybe I'm schizophrenic. The voices told me I'm not, but you don't joke around. And so anyways, they didn't find anything. Yeah. And then the Japanese doctor said he found it. I didn't make this stuff up. And then anyways, the surgery part. But yeah. The medical.
Yeah, I know. And I said, like I said, the government owes you. Yeah. And so that was a horrible, horrible time.
I just can't imagine people being treated like that after they tried to serve their country and just had a level of that you can't explain to people, that 1,000 years terror, having to see people die or killed and just, and then they spit on you. Oh, oh, yeah. It's just a,
call him baby killer.
I'm pro, oh, that would be piss me off. I'm pro military, pro blue line, like the cops, because I think they get treated like shit too. But there's one job I've been watching on YouTube. One job I don't think I could do because I would say something humorously and it would piss people off till I got shot. It's called the repo people. The repossession people that goes and takes cars, and even though the poor people didn't pay their bills, they'll still pull out a gun and shoot you because it's their car. And even though they're not paying, the bank owns it. They promised they'd do it. They're breaking the law by keeping it. That's like stolen at this point. They will still kill you. And so that scares the crap out of me. And I see these people having to talk to them, though, and trying to talk them down. They have to tase them. It gets wild. And I'm like, oh, no. Every day, it's like you're not really a police officer, so you can't do too much. But at the same time, you're in the same danger level. That job scares me. I don't think there's that would be a scary job. But I mean, they see all sorts of people, so they would, they're definitely, I think they're very familiar with human nature. So I think that that's how they're prepared. They're prepared to deal with it because they understand human nature. I think that's the key, really, is that when you know people, I feel like that was always my secret, superpower, was that I understood people and understood what made them tick. So even though I got surprised a lot. You, Josie Smarth, and there was another Latino lady that worked at Tripler, and she was a very short nurse. Anyways, you guys knew how not to press buttons. You guys made things happen, but there's certain people in life that know how to say things like, "What's your point? Calm down, take a deep breath, relax." Those things never help. Never in the history of the world have helped anyone calm down. Saying like that's a trigger word. And so you guys never said that. So I think you were really good at being able to get people to do things for you without like pulling rank or forcing them or being like triggering them, or you're going to get in trouble if you don't do it. Hey, do me a favor. Let's work together. What can we do to get this done type thing? And so I always tried to help you three out. Like when things, can you take an extra patient? I'm like, oh my God, we're so full. Yes, we'll do it. I'm like, damn it. But it's just like, how many, 29 patients, 30 patients? Like, where do you stop? Like, and we didn't have too much of a choice. Now I think with Safe Harbor, nurses, no, I still don't think they have. They're still taking inappropriate levels.
They still don't have a choice. Nurses still don't have a choice. But one thing I tried to do was I also tried to tell people why I was doing something or why I needed them to do something, because I feel that's always been something that people, that they forget to do.
You get buy-in, I'll do anything for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'll help you out versus I'm a major, I'll do what I want. You're listening. I'm a colonel now. You're definitely going to listen to me.
That's
I'm
right.
like, oh, I don't care who you are. I'm not doing shit for you now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not because I told you so, but because this is what's happening in the other part of the hospital. The hospital's melting down. So I really need you to come help over here. And that happened. I mean, so, you had to move people around, but I remember being floated and being sent and being told just go and then being abandoned. And I always said I wasn't going to do that. And I never did. I mean, I was nursing supervisor maybe like 3 times in my career. And that's one of my favorite jobs. That was always one of my favorite jobs. But I would explain to people why something was happening. And you know what? People are pretty reasonable when they understand why they're important. When you say just because or because I told you so, people realize they're not important. They feel they have no power. And I feel that's also a skill that people need to have when things happen, is that you have to be able to deal with people. You're going to have to learn how to talk people off the ledge because you only have so much ammo.
You have to validate people, make them feel important. And that's why talking to patients, I say this every episode, is that
yes,
if women always get higher compliments in medicine because women can listen longer. So the average interaction between a doctor and a patient, a woman can go 2 minutes. If you can listen to a patient for 2 minutes, you're the best provider they've ever had in their entire life. A man can only go 30 seconds. A woman can usually go 1 minute listening. When a patient's talking to me, I have to ask a question. Is it your runny nose? Are you having abdominal pain? Like, I just cannot stop. And men are known for that. They cannot listen. A woman can listen longer, validates the patient.
Well, I think the reason you do it is because you know what, you're hopping through. I mean, you're moving through patients. That's why you can see as many patients as you do, because you don't get sidetracked by the minutia. And so you move on. I mean, and you redirect people and you move on because you have to get to the next person because of the healthcare shortages. There just aren't enough resources. You have to be able to get to that next person. And so, there's value in both skills. Sometimes, it's just like we got to cut to the chase and we got to move on. And that's just the way it is. And then other times you have to know when to hold someone's hand. And maybe women, and I include myself in that, sometimes I do get hung up on okay, what's the rest of the story? And because I'm the one who said, well, I'm the one who thinks that I know that something else is going on that is causing this or that has brought them, not the sniffle that they're complaining of, but something else. And so I look for the something else, and unfortunately that takes time. And then I kick myself for the rest of the day because then I've fallen behind. But, you were always very good about get her done. And I always admired that of you.
5 minutes. Sometimes it takes me 5 minutes to finally get out of the patient, like, why are you having heartburn? I have no idea. I only eat broccoli. And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, like, okay, I drink a half bottle of Jack and I do hot sauce. And it's just like, my God, you know what I'm saying? Like obvious things, like they won't admit to you at first, but you have to pull it out of them. Oh my God, why's your stomach hurt? Well, I don't know. And all of a sudden, when's the last time you pooped? Well, 3 weeks ago. Like, I'm not going to call myself a genius right now, but I think I figured this out. I call myself Sherlock Holmes at times.
Well, but nurses have spidey. I always think nurses have spidey senses, and whereas doctors aren't taught to have spidey senses because we always spent that much time with patients at the bedside, so we get to know people. Doctors know conditions, and we know how to deal with people. I think a lot of nurses don't know how to do that, but I know that you do, and I know that I do. So that's why we kind of sense when there's something up with people, which I think is.
Have you seen those movies with like they intentionally do it in the movies for the military? We don't want the enemy to know how we wear our collars or how we do our hats. So we'll intentionally do things in the military to make the military not as accurate, and that way our foreign enemies won't be able to copy us and get into our bases and stuff. But there'll be military people, oh, I can't believe it was so fake because they didn't salute with the right hand, that type of thing. But the one thing that bothered me, the one TV show which I absolutely loved, I saw every episode, love it, love the movie, is called House. The one thing that pissed me off to no end was they'd have these doctors, the interns, go in and do all the stuff the nurses do. like draw the blood, do all the
Oh, I
tests, take
know.
him
It's
to
ridiculous.
the MRI. That drove me to, I'm like, no way in hell. I
No.
literally at Tripler, I had to teach the docs how to do because I had a special way for several catheters and how to put things down in the GI tubes. I could do it. I could get it every time, and I had to teach the new guys, the new docs going through school how to do it. And I'm like, they're never going to do this. They're going to, there's no dog's going to put a GI or do a Coude catheter. They're not going to do that shit. They're going to call in a nurse to do it. And so I had to teach them. And I was like, yeah, you just get to doing things for so many years, it becomes second nature. And that's why I thought, well, I know everything first year. And then it took 3 years, and I'm like, I felt comfortable. After 9 years, you're pretty much a professional in any job you do because it is rote second nature. But those people that come out of school, and I still see it every day, they come right out of school and they're like, I know everything. I'm not going to take any advice. I just read a book. And I'm like, oh, fuck, you don't know. We don't do that because of this, but they're going to have to learn the hard way. I just don't want it to be at a patient's peril that they're learning. And that's the thing that scares me. It's like our job just isn't like a simple, like I'm prescribing meds. If I make a mistake or they make a mistake, this could be, so that's where it's not just like
that's right. It can be absolutely fatal. And but if we go back to the kind of the I feel that if the shit hits the fan, or if there's a collapse and even a temporary collapse in society, people will just be grateful for the care. They're not going to be thinking of litigation. They're just going to be, and not that you want to kill patients or anything like that, but they're just going to be grateful that there's somebody that will take care of them, and they'll be less worried about that.
Lately is that a lot of people on Medicaid, Medicare, the physicians refuse to see them anymore because they don't show up on time or something happens. They get a negative review and it's just not worth it. So now I can't get any specialist to see my Medicaid patients. So I have to send them to Denver or different areas, and they don't want to travel because they don't have the means. And I'm like, this medicine gig is getting tough. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm scared that my patients are going to suffer. And I'm like, oh, but medicine's not cheap, and they don't want to do everyone gets healthcare type things like Canada because they don't want it to go to that level. So it's like, once again, no easy answers for survival, for medicine, for... No one cares about the gas or the food prices. The gas prices are, I can't believe it's $5 a gallon, which I don't even care about. But the food prices, I don't think people realize. Like there was a comedian said the other day, he was going to get everyone in the audience to pool their money together so they could go to Whole Foods and buy one apple. Like, it's like, it's like food has become so expensive now and the rent has gone up at apartments in Colorado Springs. And I don't know if Florida, my friend's in Florida.
I mean, it's bad. It's bad everywhere. I mean, it's gotten bad everywhere. But what's happened is when they wouldn't let people get evicted, when they let people during COVID not pay rent, whether or not they had jobs. So what happens is that nobody remembers landlords, and so landlords still have to continue to pay the bills. But if they're not getting any income, they're the ones that are getting devastated. But everybody cares about the tenants, even if the tenant bought a new car. So I found that out. I had a tenant who was living in my basement, also known as my granddaughter. And I tried to evict her, and I couldn't evict her because they said that it was a tenancy at large or something like that. Now, Tom and I had always rented out houses, and so that was the last time I rented. I mean, I'm not going to rent out to anybody else. I've got somebody up in Alaska. I've got some property up there who's renting from me, but he's been renting from me for years, and he's been very reliable. I'm not going to do anything new because, there's all these laws. I mean, the government, they want to help people out, but there are second and third order effects. So
because then the landlords lose out, and all of a sudden they go bankrupt, and no one cares about them. They're not going to get bailed out, and so it's a no-win situation.
That's exactly right. There's no win situation, and so therefore, then they're going to sell as fast as they can, and then things get, the new owners will throw people out, and then they upgrade, and then So I think there's a reason why rentals are becoming so expensive. It's because the rental market is shrinking.
I never thought of that. Yeah, that was a tough time. And I went down to St. Lucia on vacation.
Still is.
St. Lucia, they were telling me on the island, because those people are kind of poor, they said the government actually gave them $600 a month, in which in St. Lucia, that's a lot of money. I don't know where the government got the money, but every person on the island that was St. Lucian, like Caribbean type people, the government actually helped them out. I guess from the tourism, they had enough money saved up or something, but they had a bunch of money, and they had to give it out for like a year and a half because people just were going to starve to death. And so I thought that was kind of nice of the country, although it probably hurt them because I don't know if they just have to increase the prices, the taxes on the, what do you call those hotels where the foreigners come in, like Americans. But those people were going to die. In America, we gave enough money away with it. Didn't people get $1,000, $1,500 a year, 6 months or something? Didn't they have some sort of COVID money that people were getting?
There was COVID money, and I actually even got a check once, and it's like I was shocked. It's like, where'd that money come from?
I didn't deserve it. I got money, and I was, oh, we're rich, and I'm like, damn. And that's
well, I never got any money after that. Well, you've always been rich. You know, you always accused me of being rich, but you're the one who's always been rich.
You're the slumlord. You got houses left and right. You had people.
Oh, not anymore. I don't. Not anymore. I don't. That's what you always called me a slumlord. That's right. But not anymore. I'm not. It's all about me now.
And it's so funny because I talked to, I did a little podcast with my buddy, and he got adopted from Russia to his family that owned a automotive shop. And he had a trust fund so he could go to college on it. I'm like, he said he was not rich. Every person I've ever talked to that's rich says they're not rich. So when people say rich, it's all based on what they think rich is. And so is $100 million rich? No, because Bill Gates makes more than me. And so it's never enough. Like I can't explain that. Like anyone over $400,000.
It's all relative. It's all relative. So,
Yeah.
in the traveling that I've done, and I call it, count your blessings moments, because I mean, there is, we drove through some places, and we went up to Georgia because that's where my grandson was. And then driving through that country back, get through those little towns. I mean, you can't imagine the squalor and the broken down trailers but yet, people are still persevering, and and so you realize that, your life isn't so bad.
Yeah,
there's indoor propane heaters that I think are called Big Buddies, but they're not 100% safe, but they can be used indoors. So I mean, that's something that they could use. When we started RVing, we started off. Oh, but they can afford everything else. Yeah. Well, you know what? It's people. You're right. People buy what they think is important. They invest in that. So that's what. And again, human nature.
Every single person in America has a TV or a phone with YouTube to watch things. We're rich enough to afford those things, but that's a necessity for us. Whereas in Costa Rica and Afghanistan, they don't have jack.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's why one of the things I always got upset about. I mean, because there's a lot of places, a lot of folks say, well, to be able to survive, you have to have two incomes. Well, sometimes yes, but I felt that sometimes why are two people working? They're not doing it to survive. They're doing it to support their habits.
Oh yeah.
The second car, the extra, wardrobe, the going out to eat, what the things that they have to do, and then they have to pay childcare. So, I was staying at home, and I was actually babysitting somebody's kids, and I was getting half of the woman's take-home pay, but I got to stay home and take care of my own kid. And, so I was running my own business at the time, and I just took care of those two kids, and I was taking half of her take-home, and I got to stay home. So
that's a dream.
And that's also when I started learning how to do things. And that's when I started learning how to, cook from scratch and budget, because we were actually pretty poor there for a while. I mean, very poor. And I would tell people, I had to feed 4 people, and I could feed people a protein, a starch, and a vegetable for under $1. I mean, and that was, we were in, I mean, there's a lot of beans, and you know what? You can turn any leftover into soup. And soup is filling.
Yeah.
It's like, we got noodles. Oh yeah, I'll add broth to it, a bouillon cube and some water, and then we've got soup. And so that's what we ate a lot of that. And that's another thing. People have to moderate their expectations if things happen. They're not going to be able to continue to live the way they've wanted to live, or the way they've become accustomed to living.
Have you changed your mind? Because you said when you were living in Florida, you were going to, if the shit hits the fan, you were going to travel up to a place called North Carolina. Do you still intend to do that if it goes haywire, or are you going to try to hunker down at the house in Florida?
Well, so I have friends who are in Tennessee, and I'm gonna head out there probably.
They have a
They
farm?
they live on a bunch of yeah, they do. They're on a bunch of acreage. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna probably have to do. I mean, the area that I'm in is not bad, but there are a lot of people. I'm kind of on this little country road that's in the middle of a town, but there's a lot of people around me. But if the shit hits the fan, I will probably head north
Did
to
you?
and as fast as I can. You can't wait. That's the key.
Yep.
You can't delay because there's that initial phase when people are still trying to figure out what's going on, and the panic is going to set in. It's going to happen pretty quickly, but you have to be able to react quickly.
Do you have
So,
enough
that's
gas
where
cans to sustain you getting up there?
well, I've got a good sized tank. I mean, it'll take me 400 miles, so take me into Georgia, and I feel like if I filled up with gas enough, then I can make to Tennessee, and I will get some additional gas cans. But the yeah, so and then I'll have propane. I've got propane in my tank. I'll have water in my tank, and so yeah, I can support myself. I can sustain myself,
Your friends will be
and
up
and
there
then
in
I got
Tennessee.
and I yeah, and then I got a solar panel. I got solar panel on the RV.
The Colonel
And
Noah
and
said that the
I don't
traffic
stay
won't
in
really
RV
bad.
parks.
They won't be really clogged up the highways. He said it'll take a day or two to happen, but I just don't know how
Yes,
long it'll
yeah,
take
that's
you
right.
from get to Florida to Tennessee. Is that a 2 day trip?
It's a 2 day trip. Yes, and well, it depends on how hard I drive. And the thing is that once I get out of I feel like once I get out of the heavily populated areas, I think I'm going to be in better shape. But yeah, you're right. There's going to be a big evacuation, and Florida's going to be in rough shape because there's not as many ways to get out. Although Colorado Springs is kind of in that position too. I
Absolutely.
mean, there's not a lot of ways out to get out of Colorado Springs.
Because he told me the Fortitude Ranch, if something were to happen, is 3.5 hours from where I live, which could be anywhere in Colorado. And that could be down in Rocky Ford. So the road on I-25 is going to be stopped up. Any road you think about in Colorado is going to be hit. And then I'm literally, if they don't hit Cheyenne Mountain or the Air Force Academy, the center of the Springs, I'm still involved. And so it'll be hard for I-25 to travel anywhere. And even off-road vehicles in Colorado aren't going to cut it because the roads here aren't, it's not like in Kansas where it's just like you got pasture you can drive through. Kind of rough sometimes. Florida, that'd be tough
Yeah.
too. I don't know. It's swampy and the
No, it's called it's also a drive-in kind. And again, we're dealing with security. I think about security. I don't want to be in a position where I have to get out of a trailer to get into my tow vehicle and drive off if something's
oh,
going on
that's
outside.
true. Yeah.
So motorhomes. And I mean it doesn't have a slide out because slide outs are the first point of weakness in an RV, and that's where the water leaks will happen. So I would tell people, it's like if I only had 2 more feet or two less pets, my van would have been.
5 foot. Yeah. Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah,
I
perfect. Yeah.
I like the those huge ones that have a king size bed that push out, like that they expand. That's the ones I
Well,
like. But
sure. But you know what the thing is that I don't stay in RV parks. So I stay in places like truck stops, and I stay in Walmart parking lots, and I stay in Cracker Barrel parking lots, and I stay in casino parking lots. And
so you have a
so,
swivel
you know,
table, a shower, an OHC. You have
yep,
a fridge, microwave, and the twin beds in the back, and a nightstand. That always looks like a nice setup.
yeah, it is, and it's enough for the pets and me. So that's it. I mean, it's very easy to get to places. I mean, and go places. I mean, and like I said, I don't have to be in an RV park to be able to comfortably sustain myself. And
That's
if I need a
nice.
shower, I can shower in my RV or I shower at a truck stop, and I can do laundry at a truck stop.
That's nice. Where do you get the? Do you ever dump gray water, or how do you exchange that out?
Oh yeah, most truck stops.
Really?
Well, for $10 you can dump, and then some state parks you pay a fee, and then you can dump there too.
Because I
Yeah,
asked someone, why not just dump on the side of the road? No one's going to catch you at 2 a.m. Like, that's so
um,
wrong. And I'm like, I just laughed. Like,
yeah.
if you're
Well, I
survive,
mean, the thing is that, well, I mean, this qualifies under TMI, but I don't do any serious business in my black water tank,
right?
and I don't put toilet paper in there.
Oh,
So it takes a while to fill up, and then I don't put anything in it except I just pee in it, and then And then gray water, I mean, yeah, you can dump it by the side of the road, but I mean, I like to think that I don't want to create more of a problem because it is still pollution. I mean, so, I mean, I do. It's hard coming off the road when I decided to settle in Florida. It was very hard for me to say, okay, it's time now. But it was my concern about if the shit hits the fan, what's going to happen to me? I am not prepared. And I wanted to be in a position, I wanted to have a home base that I could be prepared and that I could.
Well, I would move up to Tennessee. It's cheaper there. There's no tornadoes. Well, they do have tornadoes in Tennessee, but.
Yeah. I mean, they do every now. Well, so there's that's one of the reasons I settled in Florida was because of affordability. Is that I got a small house. I'm on a third of an acre, and it didn't break my bank. That what I have here would have cost me a lot more in Colorado.
Jesus. And
then I have very good access to healthcare. I have very good access to resources, and I feel like I'm in, at my age and at my situation, I feel like I have to be someplace that has access to resources because I'm on my own. So
the medical stuff.
So that's like, the medical stuff is big. I mean, Tampa has this fantastic VA system. I got to tell you what. I mean, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, they got the VA hospital. I mean, they have got. Let me tell you what. So I've been in healthcare a lot of years, as have you. This is the first time. And I was being taken care of by people who are my friends sometimes. This is the first time that I've actually felt that I am welcome, that I am not an imposition, that they care about me. They call me up to make an appointment instead of me having to run them down. Isn't that something? I mean, that's something.
I go TRICARE Select because the VA, I'm scared. Yeah, it's a long story. But
no, I know the VA stinks there. I had a lot of problems with them there in Colorado Springs.
Denver is nice,
listen,
but yeah.
I've heard, but that's a heck of a commute. So
we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you for being on the show, Carolyn, and thank you for being on Why So Spicy.